So I just want to start off by talking about how I became vegan. When I was growing up, my family was vegetarian, so I was raised vegetarian. That wasn't really a proactive choice on my part because that's kind of all I knew as a little kid. By 3 or 4 years old, my family had ingrained the basic idea of that like meat equals hurting animals, but since we love all other beings and we don't want to hurt them, that's why we don't eat meat. At that age, the concept easily clicked. And so growing up, I also went to Pachala every Sunday at my local derasar. And that's where being vegetarian became my choice because now I had access to all this information that was reinforcing why I was vegetarian. The only thing though that I remember is I don't ever remember dairy being questioned or discussed as being negative in my experience, and I don't remember us getting access to that information that would allow us to be aware of the dairy industry, other animal farming, and animal testing. And I feel like the current generation that is going through Pasha right now, they can really benefit from learning about everything. And so there's this whole realm of ahimsa that was part of my daily life, and I really only understood that when I was in undergrad. So one day I was on a grocery trip with my roomies, and I ended up being curious about something that was labeled vegan. And I knew I had heard of that word before. I kind of knew that it was avoiding all animal products, but again, I was in this like fantasy bubble of I know why I avoid meat, but in my head, dairy doesn't hurt animals. Like I didn't know, I wasn't aware of all the cruelty that went behind the doors. And so after this grocery trip, I went back to our apartment that night and I researched what it meant to be vegan. And I went down this internet rabbit hole, as we all do, and I read these testimonies of dairy farm workers. I watched so many videos that were informational, statistical based, and also just videos that were from these dairy farms, and not just dairy farms, any production lab that tested on animals. I watched everything under the sun. And there were these two videos that really stuck out to me and overwhelmed me. So, if anybody needs a trigger warning, I'm going to be talking about assault, sexual assault. So, the first video was of a baby calf being taken away in a truck, and a mother cow was frantically running after it. And in this situation, what usually happens is if a mother cow gives birth to a boy, the boy can't produce milk in the future. So it's used for two things. In the future, it's used as basically a semen machine, or it's used as veal, so for meat, or beef, right? And so basically, when I saw this mother cow running after her child that she just had, it kind of overwhelmed me a lot, and that pushed me even more towards a vegan lifestyle. The second video was really graphic, and it was of all these cows lined up, and they were being artificially inseminated with machines, and then they were being transported to warehouses where they would sit in a confined space and sit there for months, and they would not move, they would not go outside, they would just be milk machines. And they were usually over milked, they were in poor health conditions. It was really sad. So I decided to become vegan. And for me, I'm not a overnight kind of person. Like I need to take my time and gradually ease into changes. And so I was super overwhelmed, and I just sat and questioned whether the violence that I had been supporting for so many years, um, was that worth continuing? And so I did my research, and it was a gradual journey of educating myself and improving my choices one by one, and that's how it's been sustainable for me. And animal cruelty was the top reason I made the switch, but as Sunny said, there's a couple different reasons that you can make the switch. Health, environment are nice bonuses, and I've recently been trying to educate myself on how to become more environmentally friendly, because I definitely lack in that area. And then I really think that being vegan aligns perfectly with Jain beliefs. I think that we have to adapt with time, right? When all these scriptures in for Jainism and even Hinduism and all the other religions, they were written a long, long time ago where the circumstances were very different. And I don't like to take them literally. We need to adapt them to our time right now. And one of the biggest principles of Jainism is ahimsa. And uh, I feel like the dairy industry, the meat industry, um, animal testing, they all go against this principle Jain belief. Um, so I'm just going to talk briefly about how I've incorporated veganism into my life. So my family's vegetarian and I'm vegan, but slowly over the years, just by me being around my friends and family, they've incorporated swaps into their lifestyle as well. So at home, we used to have a lot of dairy at home. My family was really big on the paneer and just like whole milk and stuff. And in the past few years, if you look at our fridge now, there's maybe 1 gallon of dairy milk every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whereas we would go through like 3, 4 in 2 weeks. And so I think it's all about the small changes. It's not realistic to have everyone around you have the same passion and sentiment for animal cruelty and veganism, but I feel like I believe in show rather than tell, and hope people that are around me will be inspired and curious to just a single item or even a whole meal or even like do a week of being vegan. And I also, when I went vegan, I didn't like the fact that I was always making my own meals and my family was eating something different and I was eating something different. So, what I love to do is whatever they're eating, I eat, but I use my alternative. So, if they're eating curry and rice, I'll make my curry with an alternative. And what's been happening lately in the past, especially during quarantine, is my parents really like my curry, and so we've just stopped making dairy curry whatsoever. And so it's just these small swaps that make a huge difference. If you go to someone and you kind of shove all these statistics down their throat, people are not as inclined to hear the message and to really understand, be passionate about it. But if you subtly just show them that, hey, the swap that I've made tastes better than yours and has less cruelty, has better health benefits, helps the environment, they're more inclined to make that switch themselves. Um, so there's also another thing. I feel like I'm definitely a talker, Sunny, but
Oh no, this is great.
basically, basically for the answers, I know that the older generations are harder to persuade when it comes to switching out their dairy foods in their daily lives. But I'll give you guys an example. My dada and ba, they the past few years they had been swapping out their dairy for dairy-free alternatives with me, and so my dada and ba were so down and so open to eating dairy-free curry, to eating vegan desserts. Like I would always make vegan desserts for my dada. And so it's all about swapping. And like for paneer, you put tofu, stuff like that. If my dada and ba could do it, everyone is convincible. And so I think holding informational sessions that are from that generation instead of a younger person talking up to an older person is more beneficial because they're bound to listen to someone their own age. And also just like implementing vegan meals during year round and using oil instead of ghee for the divos. I know some derasers have already started doing vegan meals during events, but it would be cool if it was year round and just like all dressers were just transformed into vegan dressers. And it's not that hard to do because we're almost there. Like I feel like there's just small switches that need to be made. Um, and also so it's again like what Chinika said, it's a cycle, so we have to put in our money into what we support. It's all about supply and demand. So if the consumer demands more vegan options, that's what businesses will supply. The idea is to shift what's being produced.